Okay. Can you advance perhaps just the first slide?
Just the first slide. Yes, I am. I am trying to figure out what Teams is doing here. Just a second. I need to get to my PowerPoint to be able to advance, and it would not play along. Okay, let me stop sharing for a moment, and then I'm going to try again in a second. See if we can get it working if I try it this way. Is that, can you see the slides again, Sam?
Yes. Can you go to the next slide?
Advance it. Let's see if I can advance it at all. There we go.
Okay.
So is there another presentation you wanted me to share?
No, it looks good.
It's not good. Okay, so it's advancing. You're hearing me. I can't see my Teams window, so I will be able to switch on the video if you wanted it for a second, and then it will go off again.
That will be perfect. So we know this is not AI generated.
Well, so we think. Let's try. Sitting on a different screen, so I can't see myself. I don't know what you guys are seeing. If I try and see myself, I'm going to be looking over my shoulder.
Let's just give it 2 more minutes for colleagues to join in. And perhaps for those who are wondering why we are starting at 13:10, I think the university moved to, due to load shedding, when load shedding started, we moved to starting all classes at 13:10, or just to give people a time to move around, and for load shedding as well. So this year, all our Auxins will be starting at 13:10, and I think that's the general rule around the university for meetings as well. Okay, let's start. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all well. Welcome to the first Auxin of the year in 2025. Though 2025 feels like it's already half of the year, or perhaps it's just me. So for those who do not know me, my name is Mbongile Ndwasa, and I am an advisor at the Center for Teaching and Learning. And yes, so you are going to be seeing this face throughout the year in presentation of various Auxin sessions. So I'm quickly going to take you through the process of today's session. So Hanelie is going to be doing her presentation for about 40 minutes max. And then feel free to chat or send chats in the chat space provided. And after 40 minutes, you will have about 15 minutes of having a conversation with Hanelie and engaging her on her presentation. And then we will wrap up the session at 2 o'clock. But before we do that, let me introduce Hanelie. So Hanelie Adendorff is a senior advisor in the Center for Teaching and Learning. She has a PhD in chemistry, but has been working in professional development since 2002. Her career and professional development started with an interest in blended learning, but she has since included work in the area of assessment, facilitation of collaborative learning, science education, and more recently, the decolonization of science curricula. As a member of the Faculty of Science Teaching and Learning Hub, she works with the Vice Dean Teaching and Learning to enhance the status of teaching in the faculty. Her topic today will be on AI literacy and the university. Where are we now? So in this session, Hanelie will explore the evolving landscape of higher education in the context of generative AI, the importance of AI literacy, and how universities can prepare students to engage critically and ethically with AI. Now, we know that this is a topic that has been with us for some time, so it's going to be interesting how you can share with us how you have been, engaging with AI in your own classes and curriculum. So Hanelie, I hope you are ready and I look forward to the presentation. Hanelie, you are muted if you are saying something. We still can't hear you, Hanelie. I can only see your cursor moving. In her office because luckily we are in the same room to check up on her. Hang on a second.
I think I'm back in, so can we check quickly? Can you hear me
Okay,
now?
yes,
We can hear
excellent.
you.
Okay, great. I'm going to try now. Let's get this thing out of the way. I'm going to try and just share my screen again. It should be easy enough to do. Share that one and then get the one more step. Yes, and then this. You should never test the electronics because that's usually the moment where it goes wrong. Right, so you can still hear me, but you cannot see me. Is that all good?
Yes, that's all good. But now we are seeing your side of the screen.
Oh, am I sharing the wrong one? Okay. Oh, that's a lot of fun. So let's stop sharing and start sharing again. It has a mind of its own, does it not? Okay, there we go. We do it that way. There it should be the right one now.
Perfect. Yes.
Better. Finally, goodness me. Okay, so we are there. Sorry about that. These electronics, I think, I was just thinking it is, we learned how to do all of this during COVID. And then 2 years ago, we started this journey. You've heard through some that I get bored quickly, which is why I go through so many different topics. And now it is this topic. And each time it seems to me that we do a Teams presentation, things are working slightly differently. And similarly, each time I open my laptop, it wants to do things slightly differently. But here we are. 2 years almost, it might be a little less, from when we had the first webinar on, let's call it generative AI in the higher education space. And a lot has happened since, but where are we in our thinking? So this afternoon, I'm not going to be deeply theoretical. I just want to open a few questions and conversations. And as Sim said, we'd love to hear what you guys are doing, what you are thinking, how you are approaching this. All right, so just one of the things we've learned in the period in between is that we have to clarify terms. AI is a very big thing and a big conversation, and we can fall into traps very quickly if we don't make explicit what it is that we will be talking about. So this afternoon, what I'm going to focus on is not AI actually, it's teaching, learning, and assessment in the context of higher education, in which generative AI is now a key player as well. One can also talk about other AI systems, but that is, again, not where the interest is. In 2023, when we started these webinars, we were talking about AI as the new kid on the higher education block. So what's happened since that new kid has joined us? So that's more or less where I'm going to focus. If in this picture, then, if those two AI kids are the new kids, I'm going to focus on those original kids that were here teaching, learning, and assessment before AI arrived. And one other distinction I have to make as we get started is to distinguish between responsible use of AI, which is what we are talking about from Center for Teaching and Learning and teaching enhancement division side, as opposed to, so this is the end users, those of us who don't know coding, who doesn't understand how machine learning and all of that works. How do we use these AI tools responsibly, as opposed to a term that you will come across in literature, responsible AI, which is about how we're making those other two kids in the picture, the AI tools, more responsible in multiple ways. So slight distinction there, same words meaning very different things depending on the angle you're coming from. All right, and I thought I would start this afternoon with a question, but as just said, the tools keep on changing, so it's not so easy to add a poll to a Teams meeting anymore. So what I'm going to do is go very low tech. I want you to read the question on the screen, and I want you to think for a little bit, which one of those options would you choose? And then I'll give us an opportunity to just give an indication. You're more than welcome to add to the chat. I can't see it, but if you wanted to make your choice there, A, B, C, D, feel free. Otherwise, I'll ask you to react in a moment. So out of interest, how many of you have said, so just by a show of hands, you can wave, you can clap, you can just, maybe not put up your hand, some kind of reaction, you can laugh, any form of reaction that Teams allow you. How many would select option A? Option B? So I'm not sure if I might not be able to see the reactions.
Nothing.
Nothing. Nobody selected option B. Okay, there's one also coming in now. Option C.
Can you see?
I can't. No.
Okay, there are a couple.
There are a couple in option D.
Okay, option D is the most.
It's the one with the most. Okay, so when this question was asked to put to me by a journalist a week or so ago, and when I prepared for the interview, I immediately went to option D as well. And then I took a step back and I asked myself why I selected option D. So I want us to stop for a moment and think, why did we select the option we select? Because in my own case, I felt that it told me something about how I looked at the question, what it was that I think I thought I was looking for in this case in student assessment, and how we grade it. So that was what I wrote down on gut feel initially, was option D. And then I took a step back and said to her, well, I think it's not really about any of those things. Should be the decision on who gets the better mark. Who gets the better mark should depend on what it was that I was looking for and what they produced, what the outcome was that I'm assessing, and whether students have, to what degree, whichever one of those students have achieved the outcome. Although we would be wary of giving the higher mark to option B if we knew that was what happened. So that's part of the conversation that's happened ever since. I think this conversation is about more than just assessment. This conversation, or this question here, is about what we value in higher education, what is important to us. And I really think that that AI becoming a player on our block has created quite a conundrum for us, and a very interesting question in this space. What is it about? What is what we're doing about, really? Which then brings me to another question. I think this is one of the other questions, or some of the other conversations that they started happening since 2023. What is it that needs fixing in this space, given especially that option B, the risk that students will become over-reliant on AI, will outsource their learning to it, and that we will not be able to say anything about the integrity of the assessment results that we are publishing for students. So I've heard elements of all of these. I think I started by thinking, just give us a little while and we're going to AI proof our assessments. Just to realize that it's probably not as easy as we have thought. But, or is it maybe our teaching that needs to change? Or do we need to change our students so that they won't want to use AI tools? Or is it the AI tools that need to change? Should we build in more pedagogic principles into the AI tools? Or is it something completely different that needs to change in this space? Again, I'm not going to ask you to vote, but if you take a moment and think, or is it a combination of all of that? So I'm going to argue in the end that it's possibly all of us, but especially there's something else at the bottom, which I hope we'll get to in a while. But so then what should we be doing in higher education? Where should our focus be? And quite an interesting report that I came across recently, but that came out in May last year, is the so-called Microsoft LinkedIn Work Trends report. We will share the link to where you can find this with you. This is just the front page of the report. So they surveyed 31,000 participants, I think through LinkedIn. These participants were from 31 different countries, and they were all knowledge workers. They distinguished sort of three categories of knowledge workers in their survey. The first was the leaders. Those are the people in decision-making positions in businesses. The second was the employees, so that's people that are not really in leadership positions or decision-making positions in the businesses. And then a third subcategory of the last one, or of both, I guess, was so-called AI power users. They ran this survey between beginning February and end of March last year, so for about a 2-month period. And I think all of us can guess that it might look slightly different, but I doubt that anything would have gone down, any of the stats, since then until now. So they have three main findings. The first was that employees want AI at work, and they won't wait for companies to catch up. So they looked at people that are so-called, that they classified as bring your own AI, a little bit like the bring your own device thing that we've heard in the past. So people that are saying, we're going to use AI anyway, if my company is not going to sign up for an AI license, I will just bring my own. And that was, I think they were saying about 75% of participants were saying that they're using AI anyway. And quite interestingly, that the percentages for people across the different sort of generational categories, from people 58 years old and older to people 18 to 25, there's not a huge difference. It's from 73% about 85%. So everybody is using AI already at work. And I said, they are saying that employees, their finding is that employees are saying we're not going to wait for companies to catch up. That's created somewhat of a problem for a lot of companies out there, as for universities, in terms of deciding how they respond and what they put in place. Employees are saying that AI raises the bar and breaks the career ceiling for them. So what they're basically saying is they're more efficient, they're more creative, and quite interestingly, they feel happier at work when they are able to use AI. And then the third big finding was the rise of the AI power user. So these are people that use AI at least on a weekly basis, which I mean, I guess all of us can decide for ourselves whether we are AI power users in this conversation. So that's what employees are saying. What's happening in the workplace? Still employees here. This specific graphic refers to the the occupations, as opposed to specific professions or roles, the occupations or areas of occupations that people, let me put it this way, occupations of people who have looked into or used some of LinkedIn's AI training resources that are available, typically around AI literacy. So the first question I had when I saw this report is, are they talking about generative AI, such as Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini and DeepSeek now? Not then. Or are they talking about AI more generally, the AI systems that are used in other spaces? And this was specifically focused on generative AI, which to me was quite interesting for as early as they did this research last year. So these are some of the areas that people were coming from, or most often were coming from, the top 20 kind of occupations that we're looking for support on upping their AI skills through LinkedIn. Okay, let me move that on. So what are employers saying? And this, I think, was quite a shock for all of us when we saw the report. The big thing there is that 66% of the leaders, and these are people in high-end companies, Fortune 500 companies, etc., were saying that they would not hire someone without AI skills. That raises quite a question for us in higher education as to how we prepare our students for the workplace. 77% of them are saying that they are now expecting more of early in career talent that they are appointing. So AI already raising the bar there. We see that in academia as well, that where academics allow students to use AI. Typically, they're saying this is raising the bar. I can expect more of them. And then the last one there, which is equally interesting, is that they are more likely to hire someone with less experience but AI skills than someone with more experience and no AI skills. So think of it what you like. This is quite a scary report coming out of a space such as that. So where are we at Stellenbosch University? What do we have in place? And here I'll stand still at this slide for just a little while. So I started earlier this morning in saying what I was going to focus on, and that my focus was not going to be on AI, but it's going to be on the teaching, the learning, and the assessment that we hear prior to AI. And I think we always have the option. It's a little bit like any of you who are parents. If your child is being annoyed by another child on the playground, you have one of two options. Well, I guess more than two options. You can go and shout at the child, try and change the one that is annoying your child. Yes, you could go to the school and complain, or you can work with your own child about how they interact, how they can work with whatever it is that's causing the difficulty. And this is what we've been trying to do from LTE's side at Stellenbosch University, is to figure out how do we position, especially how do we think about teaching, learning, and assessment in the context of AI. So going back to the previous report that I've just had on, I'm not going back, but with reference to that report, what we understood fairly early on was that if we are training our students, training is the wrong word, we're not training our students, but if we are teaching our students skills that can be done by AI tools, we are not really helping our students, because in any organization, an AI tool doing the same skill is going to be cheaper, and is eventually that graduate's going to be replaced by something else. So we need to figure out how to position ourselves, what it is that's going to be required in the future. And then we need to not teach students or teach skills to students that will become redundant in the future. One of the arguments that we made from the start is that the issue is not with AI per se. AI coming onto the scene is showing up fault lines that were already in higher education. And one of those fault lines is our trust in our own assessment systems and our trust in terms of what our teaching and our assessment methods are achieving. And in a chapter still to be published, written by Nicolene Herman, Deline Hubert, and myself, we argue that, or we ask the question whether we've not been training human deepfakes for quite a while already. Have we not been training students, teaching students to mimic machines and calculative thinking rather than helping them become true critical thinkers? So on the screen, there are many more. I'm just going to share with you, without going into too much detail, some of what we are seeing happening in our space. So we've got, I'm sure, lots more than the 6 who I mentioned on the screen, but academics who have paid great attention to bringing AI literacies into their curricula. Now, this is one of the points coming out of the work trend report as well, the importance of AI literacies and AI literacy training in all spaces. It is also one of the points that has been captured in the unified statement, Stellenbosch University's position paper or position statement on the use of AI in the academic project, that is in teaching, learning, assessment, as well as in research. So with the importance of AI literacies, then understanding how to use AI responsibly and understanding where AI could be a help or a hindrance. I'm just going to touch on what a few people at Stellenbosch are doing, and I'll share with you why I think this is so interesting and important. So most of these people, with the exception of Lennox, who's going to come up soon, I hope, we have either done podcasts with or they have co-presented webinars on this topic with us. So you'll be able to find more detailed information on what it is that they have done. Sharon Milan in Economics and Management Sciences teaches those kinds of modules, amongst others, to ECP students that most of us feared the most right from the start. It is about writing, learning to write. She brings AI into her classroom and slowly introduces students, ECP students, to AI, to what it can do. And through their first-hand experience, and they get to do 2 things. They get taught what writing looks like, what a good paragraph or an argument or an introduction, or whatever looks like. Then they can play with AI, see what AI produces, and evaluate that in terms of what they have learned. And I know at least 1 year, maybe last year as well, Sharon, I think I've seen you here earlier, her students got to assess a piece of writing produced by ChatGPT in the final exam, and they knew that that was what they were going to get. And I remember how Sharon shared in a previous webinar with us that students were actually far more critical of ChatGPT than one would have expected. So what she tried to do there is show her students the weaknesses and the failures of AI, as well as the advantages, what it can do for you. She did that through hands-on experience, because the students sat there and they saw when AI failed, when it did great work. It was an opportunity to really see how it operates in that space. Norman Swinwinkel in EMS actually teaches coding as a part, or coding where Excel and far more complicated things are involved. And part of what he saw was he realized that students could probably go to AI tools to help them with some of these tasks, because we all knew from the beginning that generative AI is quite good in producing code if you know what to ask them. He gave a very interesting presentation at the Total conference, not last year, the year before that, in which he shared some of how his students went about communicating with ChatGPT to get the code that they wanted. And they learned a lot about being able to communicate clearly what they want through that interaction, and also seeing that if they don't come, what they saw, in addition to that, they saw that if they don't come in with a clear understanding of what it is that they want,
then the AI tool is not that useful in helping them. So there needs to be a baseline understanding before they can meaningfully interact with the tool. And it needs an engineering. Her students, there's a part of the work where it was work they had to do on their own at home, and then they had to read sections, very complicated structures or materials and material property sections, and then they had to design an exam question or a test type question, applying Bloom's taxonomy, etc., to make sure that it's on the right level based on that work as a final task to ensure that they've actually read the work, understood the work, made sense of it. And then usually what they did is they gave feedback to one another on what they've created. It had to be a question and an answer. Realizing that ChatGPT could do that for them, she told them to go up ChatGPT and to get that to do part of it for them. And then the role shifted. So the students had to evaluate what ChatGPT came up with. The interesting thing I learned from her when I listened to her is that her students, in the critiquing of what ChatGPT came up with, they had to go back to the work and actually check whether ChatGPT, so if they didn't understand the work, they had to go check to make sure whether ChatGPT did it properly or not, or understood it properly or not. Jodie and Health in anatomy also brought AI into her courses. And in her case, one of the interesting things that came out, very similar, students had to use AI and then critique or evaluate the outputs that AI was giving them in terms of specific content. And what her students learned is that AI can be context specific. So some of the values it gave for anatomy type questions to her students were not the values that we are familiar with seeing in the South African context, because it has been trained on a different data set. So hands-on experiences, and I can continue. You've heard Albert talking before, probably Lennox won a prize at SOTL last year. These are all people that are doing amazing things, bringing AI literacy into their courses. I think what is even more interesting to me than what I've just shared is, in all these cases, I would argue that the students became more AI literate. They had a better understanding of what they could use AI for, what was responsible use, what might not be responsible use. But there's another part of it, in many, if not all of these cases, how they have introduced students to the generative AI tools to develop that literacy has also led to students engaging more deeply with the content, with the actual work and actual material, understanding materials better in Melody's case, understanding anatomy now, how it might look different in different contexts, better in Jodie's case, for example. So that to me, when I looked at all these cases earlier this year, was quite a realization that there's this added benefit that it forced students to look at the material in greater detail. So that speaks to some degree to that earlier question of students outsourcing their learning. In this case, by bringing these generative AI tools, and we're not saying that's what everybody should do, but I thought it was quite interesting, bringing these tools into the classrooms as they did also helped students better understand their material or their content and develop critical thinking or evaluative skills as a benefit of the process. All right, so I've mentioned, you see at the bottom, we've got heaps of resources. Some at some point we can share with them. We've got an AI page on CTL's website. There are others as well, but some of them are under reconstruction. So lots of resources out there, including the original guidelines for reliable use of AI in assessments and the newer unified position statement on ethical use of AI. So what I'll do next is I'll move on to the guidelines quickly and just stop here for a moment. This was the old document. It's a 2023 document. It sits underneath the position statement on ethical use of AI. It is meant to be slightly more operational. It is arguably not operational enough. So there is a group of about 15 people. So we now moved into where are we now? What's happening at the moment, and how are we going forward? So we currently have a group of about 15 people, which comprise academics, faculty librarians, blended learning coordinator types of people, language center people, and there might even be more categories that I'm not remembering right away, who have come together and who are looking at the guidelines with the purpose of making it really practical, answering some of the practical questions. For example, I have got a Turnitin report that says the chances are there's a 75% risk that this is AI generated. What do I do? What am I allowed to do? What should I not do? What are risks, etc.? Can I ban AI? Under what conditions can I ban AI? What should I put in place? Can I require students to use AI? And what should I put in place if I'm doing that? So we are working on that to make it more operational. But the heart of the guidelines at the moment, it sits around, well, it starts from the principle that as an academic, you do have the right still at Stellenbosch University to either ban, allow, or require AI use. But all three of those come with specific, or there are certain things that we have to keep in mind if we're going to do it. If we are going to ban AI use, we have to be very certain that we can actually monitor and ensure that AI use does not happen. To tell a student that this is a take-home assignment and you're not allowed to use AI there's the risk that that becomes unfair again to the student who actually follows that rule, when the student who doesn't follow the rules gains an unfair advantage. I know how we normally think about that is the fact that this will catch up with you somewhere in future, and it probably will. But sometimes there are very real consequences for students right now, such as access into an honors degree or something like that, that might be dependent on actual marks, whether we like them or not at this point in time. Similarly, if I require AI use, I have to think about things such as access to AI. Do all my students have access to that which I am requiring that they use? And if I allow AI use, this is really what the graphic I have on the screen is about. So if I allow AI use, what is there that I and my students need to take into account in that specific space? You can put many different things down here. We settled on the following four. The first is authenticity. Whose work is it? And here we would ask the lecturer to look at trying to create AI resilient opportunities, which I think to some degree is what those examples I shared earlier did, and context-specific AI use guidelines. As I said, it's not so easy to really create AI resilient assessment opportunities. For the students, the advice would be that they guard against outsourcing their learning, because that's really where our concern is. Our concern is not in the first place with assessment integrity. Assessment is meant to tell us if our students have learned. If we are not sure about assessment integrity, what we cannot say is whether the students have actually learned and achieved the outcome. So that's really where the crux of it sits. Accountability is about where the buck stops, who defends it. So one of the first things that we saw happening was in the publishing space that journals, etc., said AI cannot be a co-author because it cannot be held accountable for any of the things it puts out there. So the accountability is going to rest with the human author. So what we advise students to do is to always fact check any AI output they get and not to rely on the AI output. It is quite scary to see in surveys done around that a lot of people have replaced Google with different generative AI tools, or they're now using that more often to source information than they might be with Google. That's dangerous because we know that generative artificial intelligence still and probably always will hallucinate or will create outputs that aren't factually correct, and that's by nature of what it is at the moment. So as a lecturer, we have critical conversations with our students to model responsible use. We show them what that looks like. Transparency is to clearly communicate the guidelines with students, as well as to tell them if you are using AI, if I'm using AI, especially in things such as assessment, but other spaces as well. And for students, we advise that they declare their use of AI tools, just in the same way that if you were doing science research, you would say what instruments you used, for example. We can go overboard here, or we have to be careful about exactly what we are asking. I think the guidelines some ways advise that students do keep track of their their prompts just in case they would ever need it. But I know some people require that students actually submit that. In all those cases, the advice would always be to be able to say why you wanted a specific thing and to ensure that that is still speaking towards learning in general. And then finally, fairness. So for us as lecturers, we have to carefully consider things such as if I'm banning, might that be unfair to someone else, for example? All right, what can it be used for? So here we have created some use categories, which we're trying to say, but this is very, very contextual again. We have spaces in which it might be safer to use AI. So generally, if I'm going to declare and I say I used AI to help me brainstorm the session, which I did to some degree, generally brainstorming, planning, also proofreading and asking it to give me feedback on a piece I've written, are the things that we feel that's what we would generally have been okay if a student enlisted someone else's help to help them think through what they're going to do, to help them plan, unless the planning is the key outcome that you are after. But even then, it gets tricky quickly because we need to look forward to what's going to happen in the workplace, what will be available to them, what will be required of them, what will be assumed when they arrive there. We caution against using AI for learning about things and for finding sources. And here I have to immediately add, so we caution against using the most common generative AI tools for these purposes. So I would not use ChatGPT or Claude to learn about a new topic, such as machine learning. I have tried, and it can contradict itself at times. So I have to do so much fact checking that it starts to waste my time. However, there are other tools that, and the same with finding sources. These tools have improved a lot. I know a lot of us are still resting on, they can't find sources, so we will see these fabricated sources. Now, they've actually improved quite a bit on that front. They might still fabricate sources, but they can also provide actual sources. But there are other tools besides ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini, and those that are really good at doing this, such as Elicit, especially, and many others. And we strongly advise, obviously, against using AI to create any kind of output that doesn't have enough of you yourself in it, that you can't claim authenticity for. Okay, so that last point I'm not going to touch on too much. Okay, so what are we not talking about? These are the things we've been talking about, and these are the things that that we've paid attention to. I think what we have now learned a lot about how to develop AI literacy in the classroom and the additional benefits of that. What we've not really started a conversation on is the issue of outcomes. It's similar to a conversation we had during COVID. Are there outcomes that we might have to relook? Are there outcomes that in COVID it was that are no longer achievable? But now it is, are there outcomes that might become redundant, that might lead to skills that AI tools will be doing in future? And how will we learn that? Are there outcomes that we need to add that will be required? It is interesting that with each of these revolutions, and now again, that's in the work trend report, we know that the fear just 2 years ago was that a huge percentage of current jobs will disappear. But there are definite shortages in certain areas at the moment. So it changes the workspace. And I think we need to look at what we do through the lens of the world beyond university. So not with an eye of preparing our students for a specific job or task, but with an eye of understanding what it is that will set them up for thriving post-university. And I have a feeling that that will be contextual to the specific discipline we are in. It's not something I can do as an academic advisor on behalf of other people. Each one of us who are an expert in our own field will need to think about how AI might be a player already or become a player in that field, and what will be okay or not. I presented a talk on journalism a while back to master students, and many of those master students are journalists already, and some of them said to me, not only are they allowed, but they're already required to use AI tools in some of the tasks they do. So are we preparing our students for that? Are we looking at our outcomes and saying, Well, these outcomes have become redundant. These outcomes we've never had, but we now need to add them to our syllabi. I think that's one of the things I want to leave with us. Are we talking about outcomes in this space enough? So the picture on the screen, I asked Copilot to draw me a picture of kids on a school ground named Teaching, Learning, Assessment, and AI, and one without a name, and I wanted assessment to be crying. Now you can see how well Copilot understood my prompt, probably because I've not paid enough attention to proper prompt engineering. But I thought this little ash here in the front corner with these perplexed look is the perfect character for outcomes. Outcomes has been sitting there quietly wondering why all this commotion is happening around them without them being quite part of it. Right, then in prepping for this, I thought, let me see quickly, just going to Elicit and ask Elicit, what are the key themes coming out in literature published on generative AI in teaching, learning and assessment in higher education since late 2023? And it's quite telling. They say it touches on several key areas, the teaching and learning processes, stakeholder perceptions, institutional practices. There's the need for new assessment strategies, pedagogical approaches, AI literacy skills that comes up everywhere. Challenges include academic integrity, privacy concern, potential biases. We've all heard that, right? These are the conversations we have sat in on and heard a lot about it. Students emphasize the need for interdisciplinary learning and hands-on activities, which I think is why those examples I shared from our colleagues Stellenbosch are really golden, because it was hands-on. All that they did were hands-on. Future research include innovative pedagogies, developing AI competency measures. There are some out there already. Investigating the AI impact of AI on workforce readiness. What is interesting is outcomes doesn't feature anywhere there. It's not been in, this is from the top 4 papers, and then scrolled down the papers that Elicit gave me, and very little mention of AI, of assessment in those papers, sorry. And I must credit here Dr. François Sillier, who was previously at Stellenbosch University, now at UCT. During a colloquium last year, he put this on the map and he said, well, we're talking about the wrong thing. We should not be talking about learning or assessment. We should be talking about our outcomes. And I know he is working on an academically rigorous way of doing that. So we're awaiting a publication from his side. What else are we not talking about? I think in this conversation, we would need to say something, just mention it in passing, at least the issue of human agency and learning. And I've been thinking more recently, and again, that is what Elicit gave me when I asked it about human agency and learning. And it some interesting things coming out, but I've been thinking about human agency in the context of when all of us learned about social media and online privacy protection a few years ago. That was one of the previous big new things, right? I remember attending a presentation and being shell-shocked that my legal claim to privacy protection in the online space depends on the extent to which I protected, made choices that protected my own privacy. So if I didn't do anything to protect it, I can't put in a claim that it should have been protected. And I'm wondering if this should be part of our responsible AI use or AI literacy training of students going forward. It's going to be up to you to enact your own human agency to ensure that you stay relevant, that you learn what you need to learn. And it's obviously going to be up to us to ensure that we have curricula that are relevant to ensure that students learn and achieve the kinds of outcomes that would set them up for thriving. But I think each of our individual responsibilities is just getting bigger. I think that's more or less what I have to say. So I will leave you with a question that made me think and still makes me think, which the same journalist asked me. She asked me whether I think people will get less creative as a result of access to generative AI tools. So I'd be curious to hear what some of your thoughts are on that. I will end off on the picture that ChatGPT drew me when I asked it the same question or gave it the same prompt that I gave. And it even put PowerPoint background in there because I told it I wanted a PowerPoint background. Yeah, so I would, I'm hoping that we have fair enough time for people to interact. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you are doing. Let's just have a conversation if possible.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Hanelie. And I'm also not even going to give a summary of your presentation because we only have 5 minutes left. So colleagues, can I quickly get comments? And a couple of people, or perhaps one person was asking about on AI literacies. I did share our website on the chats. Please visit our website. She likes the security and privacy part, especially the human agency aspect. Colleagues, please put your hand up and anything that you have. Yes, you can go. Is it? I only say it is Zimbi.
How do you know? Because it only shows my initials. So how do you know my name? Anyway.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Hanelie. This is really great. So I missed the first questions that you asked because something weird was happening. So I'm not sure what those questions were. But I think what I want to also just mention and comment on is the anxiety that surrounds, the AI use, but also the, like the skill upgrade. So it's almost becoming a thing of questioning a person's capacity or ability to do certain work depending on whether they disclose if they use AI or not. But what I appreciate about your presentation is sharing the different ways in which some educators have used AI, to actually make it a learning experience where students are encouraged to critically evaluate whether an output is from an AI generated content, or the content is AI generated, or whether it's original work. And I think it also highlights the importance of that being a new relevant skill, the ability to know when something is AI generated and to also be able to critique that. But I'm most grateful for the links that you guys shared on the tools and guidelines, because I don't think a lot of people are aware of it. And there is a sense of shame around using AIs, but I'm a big fan, so no shame. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Zimbili. I think Sim knew your name because it's in your email handle, which we can just see there.
Oh yeah.
It's no issue. Today, I'm so glad if I can see something technologically because I'm talking about AI and tech is failing me. Yeah, I'm also very excited about what people are doing here. And what I can say on that front is we are putting together, compiling sort of a case study booklet or advertising is the wrong word. We're just trying to compile this into a format that we can share with people. We've recently shared an early draft of it with people at the Assessment Learning and AI short course, and they also responded very positively to hearing what other academics are doing. And I think it's very valid because other academics are standing in the workplace. And the more of these examples we can get across contexts with larger and smaller groups, the greater the chance that there would be something that others would resonate with. So we're hoping that soon we would have more of that available. Emma, if you're in the meeting, maybe if you can share a link to our Spotify playlist for the podcasts where we go into slightly more detail with some of these colleagues about what they are doing. If you've not yet, that would also be great. I see another hand. While you get ready to ask your question, I'm just going to quickly respond to one question that was in the chat. It's about whether CTL is considering offering an AI literacy course of some kind. So we have the assessment, learning, and AI short course, and we decided to combine these topics because we feel that they all belong together as part of the bigger picture of assessment, teaching, learning, assessment. It has started in February, but and finishes in May. There's a second round of it starting in the second semester. So watch out for when those calls are coming out to join that. We are looking at putting together a heuristic or a landing page document that can help you navigate the space of AI AI resources that are available specifically through the lens of the operational guidelines. So we're hoping to have that available in the online space soon. And then our sister centers, Center for Learning Technologies, have last year. I'm not sure if they will this year. I think they might. I think I've seen such an advert, offers a short course on social justice and artificial intelligence. So those are some of the offerings in this space. Right.
Thanks, Hanelie. There's also NT Penyanet's hand is up.
Sorry, I'm Hanelie. I think first of all, thank you for the presentation. I don't know whether the resources that you've shared now address this question, but I get a lot of question on TikTok. I don't use AI, cover any AI or use AI teaching methods in my module, but I do get on TikTok a lot of students ask me the question, how do we detect if a student has used AI? Yeah, I just wanted to ask that for myself, because obviously, I think it's important that we also know how to detect it. I at this stage don't know, because I don't know. I don't think Turnitin works for AI. I'm not sure.
No, you're absolutely, well, I shouldn't be so definitive, but I agree with you. I don't think Turnitin works really well for AI detection. And if I'm not mistaken, I've sort of seen them going a slightly different direction, or they're branching out into different things. There are multiple tools out there. GPT-0 is another one that claims that they can detect AI-generated work. That is a slippery slope very quickly, which is one of the reasons that I think we need to really think differently about AI use. In what space can we get a space where it doesn't matter if they've used AI, because what we assessed, and hopefully my power will stay, what's assessed is going further. It's beyond that. So just on that point of Turnitin, what we advise at the moment is if students do use it and you get a report that says 71% AI generated, we don't really have a legal ground on saying to students, I want you to redo the work, or you're getting 0 or whatever. What it does is open a space for a conversation. Let's sit around a table and talk about that. Other universities have found that these things flagged as AI use. Quite often students will say, yes, we used AI, but we didn't realize that it was not okay the way that we used it. So wonderful space for opening a conversation. A last point, when you mentioned TikTok, I thought of it on AI detection is that just yesterday I was looking into research tools again, and there's someone I follow who talks at places like Oxford University and share with students all the quick ways you can do a literature search, and normally tell you to go read the papers yourself as well. But he used something called echo writing. He wrote something, AI wrote it completely actually in his own style, an introduction to something, and then he put it through text detection, and then he shared that there are, and we all know that actually there are multiple additional tools or ways in which students then take another step to hide the tells of AI, because there are people that are saying there are typical tells of AI. If you see this here, then you know, oh, this is most likely AI generated. But there are equally many people out there in YouTube and TikTok space giving students advice on how to hide that. Yeah, a slippery slope, that one, very quickly.
Yeah. Colleagues, I know we have ran out of time because of our earlier technical glitches, but if any of you have more questions, I think Hanelie is still available, right? We can still continue the discussion with those who can stay. Or if you have any further questions, I hope, Hanelie, you don't mind if they send you an email and ask anytime. We also have the resources on our CTL website. Are there any last questions? Okay, it looks like everyone is good. Thank you so much, Hanelie, for today. And it seems like AI is, still a hot potato at the university. And yes, it is also understandable because it's something new that is always evolving. But I think, Hanelie, you ended this today's session with quite a thought-provoking message around, what is still missing in the conversation, in the outcomes, and as well as the human agency and learning that also needs to happen. And I hope throughout the year, we are all going to be thinking about that. And I'm looking forward to how colleagues are going to come back and perhaps explain to us how they are using it in their curriculum. If there's nothing else, I am going to thank everyone for being here and engaging us on this topic. And I wish you all the best throughout the year. Thank you so much, colleagues.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.